I'm the Executive Director of Teaching Matters, and we are thrilled to host you in our third annual Principals Forum. We are here today to engage, and I mean engage, in what I hope will be a fairly interactive discussion with Michael Horn, who is the co-author of the book Disrupting Schools. And if you could welcome Michael Horn.
So what I wanted to do today was really work through just a couple of these theories, because what we found is indeed that there are certain patterns to innovation that make it far more predictable. And so I want to work through one of these models, which has become known as this theory of disruptive innovation, that shows how you can make innovation far more predictable and indeed successful. And occasionally we see another kind of innovation come along. And we chose a really, really bad word to describe this innovation. We call it a disruptive innovation. I candidly tell you it's a bad word for it because disruptive implies a lot of other things in the English language, many of them not good, or implies that giant breakthrough improvement, but we don't mean either thing by it. What we mean something is actually an innovation that is not as good as judged by the historical measures of performance, but it brings along a new value proposition. Something around affordability, simplicity, convenience, accessibility, customizability, and it serves people who couldn't possibly afford that backplane thing, or it was too complicated for them or something like that, along a new measure of performance, and comes out into this new field and serves these people we call non-consumers with this thing that is infinitely better than their alternative, which was nothing at all, and it too gets better piece by piece by piece. And one by one, the customers come out into this new field because they're delighted around this new value proposition because it's simpler, more affordable, all these things, right? And that brings us to this education question at K-12, which is there a disruptive innovation going on in K-12 education? And we believe there is, which is this online learning. And the question is, how would you know if it was actually here? And whenever you see a disruptive innovation take effect, it almost always follows this, it always follows this S-curve pattern. In the very early years, people sort of creep into the marketplace, just try it out. They're early adopters, the product isn't that great, there's a lot of cycles of improvement and feedback and the like. And then at some point, figure it out, and the world flips and people rapidly adopt it, and then it levels off at the top. A very clear S-curve that we've seen is in high school, where we project that by 2019, 50% of all high school courses will be taken online. That may be in a blended environment, it may be in a distance, it's going to probably be some combinations. So things are growing really fast. The question is then, is this a good thing? And is it an opportunity or is it a threat? And how might we control it? So computers have been around for 3 decades. We've been spending wildly on them in schools for the last 2 decades, well over $60 billion by a conservative estimate. They haven't transformed anything, and the reason is that most foundations, education software companies, schools, and so forth have crammed them into the existing model. So we've shoved them into the back of classrooms. You can do some marginal programs, create a PowerPoint presentation, put them on computer labs so you can learn keyboarding, but we've really never transformed how learning itself actually takes place with this model. And so they've added great cost to, but transformed very little, which is at odds with how our experience with technology is in the rest of our lives. But it's predictable, and the reason is because they haven't heeded this idea of disruptive innovation. So the question is, how would you grab onto this? And what we've seen is that whenever an organization has been able to do disruption itself and master that innovation, they've created an autonomous division where they've said, the problem is not a technology problem. The problem is actually the model in which it's used, and then been able to prioritize it. So the question is, can schools do that? And I think they can. And the first step is to recognize that you have to start with areas of non-consumption. And that's challenging because where would areas of non-consumption be in an education setting? With online, you have the opportunity to give just-in-time development on the problem you're actually facing in your unique classroom in a way that's accessible to the teacher when they can get it. Tutoring, huge area of non-consumption. We know that roughly 20% of the students who need tutoring actually get it. It's been traditionally the domain of the wealthy. particularly in New York City, you see this fragmented world quite, probably in the biggest extreme in the country, I'd actually suggest. And in elementary schools, you're starting to see this as an opportunity where people can bring tutoring actually into the school day in a way that's not cost prohibitive to actually help students get the individual attention that they need. But it's a huge opportunity to reverse something, and I'm not going to go through the argument in the book here, but that's been a problem in our schooling system, which is what got us so excited about it, which is that right now we have a monolithic school model, literally modeled after a factory model. We batch students in, we add value to them, we ship them out on the other end. And it treats them as one product. The reality, of course, is that we all learn in incredibly different ways. At minimum, some people learn really quickly, other people slower. Some people need to repeat something before they really grab hold of it, and on and on. Online learning has this potential to make time variable so that learning can be constant and shift us away from this factory model monolithic system into a much more student-centric one. There's some practical or policy implications that flow from this. I think you can see that hopefully a lot of what we're doing is giving a language to think about some of these innovations that we're seeing and framing it as, at first it feels like a threat in many ways to the current model we've had and historically had for the last 80, 100 years. But if we actually shift our vantage point, that it can actually be a huge opportunity. And so I think one of the things you get to talk about at your tables is, in each of these very specific circumstances, is how is that the case and how can we embrace it and what are the downsides of this? So thank you very much for having me, and I'll turn it back now. Thank you.
This year I purchased a program called PowerSpeak, which is an online program, and I had to wait until the end of the year to have data. 91% of the kids are passing their foreign language classes. I could have 5 different languages going on in the same room at the same time. I don't have to buy textbooks. So it saved me a fortune, and it saves the teacher time and effort because everything is so organized. She doesn't have paper anymore. It's an absolutely wonderful thing.